Ho, every one that thirsteth, come you for water, and he that hath no money, come you, buy and eat. Yes, come, buy wine and milk, without money, and without price. Welcome to Harbingers Inkhorn. I give this message only at the beginning of the books, not each chapter. I have come to offer water in a thirsty place, to declare the former things, and the new which come forth now, to proclaim the year of the Lord's good pleasure. Read along at www.mechon-mamre.org. That's www.mechon-mamre.org. Go to the top of the page, click the English Bible at the top. Then you can select the book that we're in. If you ain't online, you can follow along with your King James Version. Some words will be a little different, but the meaning, it can't be missed. I ask that you forgive me when I commit an error.
Nahum, chapter 1. The burden of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum the Elkoshite. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord avengeth, and is full of wrath. The Lord taketh vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. The Lord is longsuffering, and great in power, and will by no means clear the guilty. The Lord in the whirlwind and in the storm is his way, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebuketh the sea, and maketh it dry, and drieth up all the rivers. Bashan languisheth, and Carmel, and the flower of Lebanon languisheth. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is upheaved at his presence. Yes, the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his indignation? And who can abide in the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are broken asunder before him. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knoweth them that take refuge in him. But with an overrunning flood he will make a full end of the place thereof, and darkness shall pursue his enemies. What do you devise against the Lord? He will make a full end. Trouble shall not rise up the second time. For though they be like tangled thorns, and be drunken according to their drink, they shall be devoured as stubble fully dry. Out of you came he forth, that deviseth evil against the Lord, that counselleth wickedness. Thus saith the Lord, though they be in full strength, and likewise many, even so shall they be cut down, and he shall pass away. And though I have afflicted you, I will afflict you no more. And now will I break his yoke from off you, and will burst your bonds in sunder. And the Lord hath given commandment concerning you, that no more of your name be sown. Out of the house of your God will I cut off the graven image and the molten image. I will make your grave, for you are become worthless. Okay, let's go back up to verse 1. Now, we are beginning to read Nahum. Nahum, as well, obviously lived in the time of the Assyrian captivity, and he as well is prophesying against Nineveh, just like Jonah did. Jonah went in and carried the message to Nineveh. We are seeing now that Nineveh was a great city of sin and idolatry, and Nahum is speaking out against Nineveh, and he's actually saying, this is the vision that I had of Nineveh, and this is the burden of Nineveh, and the burden is that's something you're going to have to carry around. It's like a weight that's been put on you. It's a burden, and that's what an idol is. An idol's a burden. It's something that has to be carried around. Well, it can't walk on its own. It is made by men. It has no strength or power of its own to do anything. Its strength and power come from man who made it. And Nineveh is the capital city of Assyria. Nineveh was built by Asher. Asher, and this is documented in Genesis. And Asher was a descendant of Noah, and he built the city of Nineveh. And Nineveh basically means Ninus' abode. And we're going to pick it up here in verse 1. The burden of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. And this is the burden of Nineveh. This is how we can identify Nineveh. This because they have the Asher there. They have built this great city. This is the capital city of Asher, the Assyria, which is the Asher, this progress, this step up, this altar. And this was one of the great problems in Israel. So we're going to use Nineveh as the example. And this is the vision that Nahum had, and this is the way Nahum's seen things. Nahum is the comforted. Nahum means the comforted, and they've been comforted by God because they've been allowed to see, or Nahum's been allowed to see, and he is an Elkoshite, and the Elkoshi, or the plural for Elka, the Elkosh, and means those the mighty one ensnares, or the mighty one has ensnared those. And Nahum's comforted because he has seen this and he understands this. He understands he was taken in a snare, and this snare is basically idolatry. And we're going to find out God has set up a snare for those that try to ensnare. 2. The Lord is jealous and avenging God. The Lord avengeth and is full of wrath. The Lord taketh vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. So God's angry. And we know, because now God has set this snare up to catch these. God is angry. These that have come into his garden, and these that are destroying the harvest. So we're going to set up a snare for them, and that's basically what God's done. He's setting up, because they're vermin. They are destroyers. Now, this is an example, so to speak, of this. And God's taken vengeance now on those that are against him, his adversaries, and he reserves his anger now for his enemies, those that are against him, those that are trying to come against God and to make war against God and to say this is God when it's not God. 3. The Lord's long-suffering, and he's great in power, and will by no means clear the guilty. The Lord in the whirlwind and in the storm is his way, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. You can't measure who God is. You can't define God. God's not going to, he's long-suffering. That means God is long-suffering. He puts up with it to the end. He's going to let the sinners come to a full, and that's what he's done. But God's great in power, and by no means will he clear the guilty, see. And what is the guilty? Those that have sinned, those that have caused sin, those that have deceived through the lack of understanding, through the teachings of men, teaching that which they're taught to teach, instead of listening to what God says, see. But first of all, then, according to the law, they got no business teaching anyway. This job was given to Levi. In the whirlwind, in the storm, is his way. This is God's way, see, the whirlwind. That twisting wind, that what's wind? This wind's vanity. Wind is vanity. So in the whirling of vanity and in the storm is God's way, and that's what we see in the earth. This vanity twirling around, this waste of time, these words of men. They're never going to save you. They can't save you. Why? Well, they teach you don't have to be obedient to the law. Sin runs rampant, and they continue to make their money. This is how they make their money. See, off sin. Why would they try to teach you not to sin if that's how they make their money? But we're going to find out. See, God's going to pour the truth out. And this is 4. He rebukes the sea, and he makes it dry. He dries up all the rivers. Bashan languisheth, and Carmel, and the flower of Lebanon languisheth. Well, that's what God just did, see. He took away knowledge. He took away understanding. He has rebuked the sea. and he makes it dry, and all the rivers dry up. These rivers, these are that which represents, is supposed to be the truth. These waters that come down, these waters that descend, even like the Jordan River, these waters that descend, rivers represent understanding. But God has dried up all your understanding, see? And Bashan, that fertile plain, languisheth, it suffers. And Carmel, the garden land. See, this garden land, this place where you plant looking for a harvest, it languisheth, suffers. Why? Well, it's not getting no water, it's not getting no rain, it's drying up. The flower of Lebanon languisheth. Lebanon, that place that is made white. Made white. It has to be cleaned. The flower of it languisheth, that it suffers. What's the flower? That which gives it its sweet odor. That which makes it look beautiful. See, it's withering and dying. 5, the mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is upheaved at his presence. Yes, the world and all that dwell therein. See, as the presence of God comes through, and the truth comes through, the mountains shake, those mighty places, those high places, and the hills melt away. These places that are lifted up or exalted, they melt away before the Lord and his understanding. The earth is upheaved in his presence. Those valleys that were low, those of flesh, are lifted up in understanding. Why? Because that's what God is, the understanding. It comes from the obedience of the law. How can you have any understanding if you're not obedient to the law? This is your understanding. This is your knowledge. This is your wisdom. 6. Who can stand before his indignation? And who can abide in the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are broken asunder before him. Who can stand before God's indignation? Indignation is the anger that comes in the form of revenge because you've been mistreated over a long period of time. Been mistreated, see, and this builds up into a rage of revenge, and we can call that indignation, and that's what God's indignation has become. And who can abide in the fierceness of his anger when he does return? And he pours out his fury like fire. And we know this fire is the law of God, and it does devour, and it does consume. And the rocks are broken asunder before him. These rocks are those words of men that have went out and fell to the ground, that didn't come true. See, these are the men's mouth, men's words, and they fall to the ground. This is Tarshish. That is Tarshish, that rocky region where men's words have fell to the ground, and men stumble and trip, ankle breakers everywhere. 7. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knows them that take refuge in him. The Lord is good, and his law is good. His law is salvation, and salvation does come from God. He knows who takes refuge in him. He knows who you are, see, because you are close to him, and he hears you. 8. But with an overflowing flood he will make a full end of the place thereof, and darkness shall pursue his enemies. With a full overrunning flood, see. And we remember the story of Noah. God set the ark in the sky and said, I will never again destroy the earth with waters. But this was an example, see, of the waters which would come. And this flood we're talking about here is the flood of truth and understanding that's going to go forth and destroy these places of men, these altars they've made, these images they've lifted up. He's going to make it end. Because this is the darkness that pursues his enemies. They run off and they chase after idols. idols. They've lifted up. 9. What do you devise against the Lord? He will make a full end. Trouble shall not rise up the second time. See, because that's what God's doing. He's making this great example, and we're going to see now. God's going to make a full end this time. He's going to make a full end because you have devised against God. You have devised against the Lord your God. And now he's come to take revenge. 10. For though they be like tangled thorns, and be drunken according to their drink, they shall be devoured as stubble fully dry, like stubble fully dried, baked in the sun, dried out. As soon as the fire touches them, poof, they're gone, they're taken. Why? That was their judgment from God. For though they be like tangled thorns, and I've been talking about these thorns from the beginning when the children first come across the river, see? These thorns represent those ones who do not follow the Word of God. And their words have become all tangled together. They're like thorns. And they're made drunk according to their drink. This is the drink they were made drunk by. They drank of the cup of the wrath of God. They drank from the wine. And they're made drunk. Out of 11. Out of you came he forth, that deviseth evil against the Lord, that counseleth wickedness. And that's what we're going to find out, see. Out of you come he forth. And this is Nineveh. This is the one God's using as an example. This example of the end even. 12. Thus saith the Lord, though they be in full strength, and likewise many, even so shall they be cut down. And he shall pass away. And though I have afflicted you, I will afflict you no more. And God's talking about Israel. He's not going to afflict anymore. That's who he's talking about. We're going to find this out. It's going to come, see, and because we're going to explain it. But God says, now, though they be in full strength, we're not talking about Israel here, and likewise many, even so shall they be cut down, and he shall pass away. We're using him as this, the whole thing, see, as a he. And he shall pass away. Why? He becomes a masculine that has exerted against God. See? He has, Nineveh is considered a masculine here. Why? It's took on that position as something that's come against God. It's exerted himself. And this is more or less a challenge. 13, and now will I break his yoke from off you, and will burst your bonds in sunder. And now will I break his yoke. Once again, his yoke, we're using it as a masculine, because he has come up against God. But his yoke is that which he's caused you to pull by. And this is men. Men have put a yoke on you, see. This is the yoke of men. These are the teachings of men. The rules and laws of Omri. We'll find out by the prophets later on. These rules and laws that men have put upon you have nothing to do with the Word of God or the law of God. Oh, they try to tie it to with some kind of similitude. God made the similitudes he wants tied to it. These men ain't got no authority to make similitudes. They wasn't given no authority to teach. By what authority do they do these things? See, the law is calling them out. The law is calling them out. You either do it according to the law, or God said you can't do it. See, and then that there's a sign of who you are, in that you do err, not knowing the law. See, this automatically becomes a sign. You're one who's ordained yourself. You're most likely a priest of Jeroboam. See, the one who contends with the nations. And that's who we're talking about. 14, and the Lord hath given commandment concerning you, that no more of your name be sown. Out of the house of your God will I cut off the graven image and the molten image. I will make your grave, for you are become worthless. And who's God talking to? He's talking to this one who has exerted himself against God, who's made this Asher, who's made this alternative altar you can go to. God is your Savior. There is no other. See, there is no other. You lift up a man, how could he be your salvation? He's a man. See, had to be sent by somebody. Could be no more than a messenger. See, you can't make the messenger into God. This is what Gideon did. See, Gideon made himself an ephod, and you're not allowed to do that. You're not a Levite, and this is the law. This is the law. We're going to move on. See, we're going to move on to chapter 2.